Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, and today we'll read from Chapter 1, text number 3. The third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam has 33 verses, 33 chapters, 333. What happened to verse 1 and 2? You're still there. Well, yeah, we'll definitely read them later because we're going to start reading the third canto. What we're planning to do for the Bhagavatam classes is to, as we're reading through the Bhagavatam, which we intend to do, Krishna willing, is to, by consensus, find verses that we find especially helpful, important, ones we want to go more deeply within, and we'll collect them as we go, and then they can be lined up for the Bhagavatam classes. That way we can stay focused on the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. I said verse number 2, right? Did I say 3? I meant 2. Yadva ayam mantra kridvo Bhagavan Akhileshvara Poravendra Graham Hitva Praviveshat Masat Kritam. You'd probably like to know the word for word before you chant the Sanskrit, right? Yes. Yat, the house. And to satisfy Navina Narada Prabhu, I'm going to read text number 1. Shukadeva Goswami said, after renouncing his prosperous home and entering the forest, King Vidura, the great devotee, asked this question of His Grace, Maitreya Rishi. And the name of this chapter is Questions by Vidura. Yat, the house. Vai, what else is there to say? Ayam, Shri Krishna, Mantra Krit, minister. Va, you people. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Akila Ishvara, the Lord of everything. Pauravendra, Duryodhan. Graham, house. Hitva, giving up. Pravivesha, entered. Atmasat, identify with oneself. Kritam, so accepted. Translation. What else is there to say about the residential house of the Pandavas? Sri Krishna, the Lord of everything, acted as your minister. He used to enter that house as if it were his own. And he did not take any care of Duryodhan's house. And also, I'll go through the Sanskrit one more time, then others, if you wish, may chant. Yadva ayam mantra kridvo Bhagavan Akhileshvara Pauravendra Graham Hitva Raviveshat Masat Kritam. And the purport. According to the Gaudiya Achinta Beda Bed Tattva philosophy, anything which satisfies the senses of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna is also Sri Krishna. For example, Sri Vrindavan Dham is non-different from Sri Krishna, Tad Dham Vrindavanam, because at Vrindavan the Lord enjoys the transcendental bliss of his internal potency. Similarly, the house of the Pandavas was also the source of transcendental bliss for the Lord. It is mentioned here that the Lord identified the house with his own self. Thus the house of the Pandavas was as good as Vrindavan. And Vidura should not have given up that place of transcendental bliss. Therefore, the reason for his quitting the house was not exactly family misunderstanding. Rather, Vidura took the opportunity to meet Rishi Maitreya and discuss transcendental knowledge. For a saintly person like Vidura, any disturbance due to worldly affairs is insignificant. Such disturbances, however, are sometimes favorable for higher realization, and therefore Vidura took advantage of a family misunderstanding in order to meet Maitreya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Nina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarvatutam Parijana Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhamritamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kolpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktavinda Nitai Namine Che Namirhate Sharamulye Nam Tite Chere Nitai Namine Che Namirhate Sharamulye Nam Dite Chere Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. It's a great pleasure to all of us be together for the Kartik here in Govardhana. It takes engineering one's life to end up in such a place as Govardhana Hill, because by the default mode one may stay in the current of one's life, which seems to be urgent at every moment. There's a sense that one may develop from being in a material body and in the material world, that I have to stay in my work in order to survive. Narada Muni and other great sages who have a higher perspective to offer say such things as tasyaiva heto prayateta kovido nalabhyate yad brahmutam upariyata. tadukavat talabhyate dukavat anyata sukham kalena sarvatra gabira rambasa. Kalena sarvatra gabira rambasa. Gambira means deep. It's very deep. He says that in due course of time, or by the power of time, that all things that we deserve come to us naturally. And therefore, he suggests not giving one's urgent attention to mere survival or trying to elevate one's condition in the material world. Do the best you can, but don't overexert yourself for positioning yourself in the world, which is constantly changing anyway. Rather, he suggests that you give your attention to making spiritual investments, and that will be more effective because those are unique. Those opportunities are unique to human beings. Labbasadurlamabidam bahusambhavante manusham artanam anityam apihadira. The Bhagavatam says, I shouldn't say the Bhagavatam says, and Krishna says, in the Bhagavatam, unless it's one of the Yogendras, somebody can look it up, Labvam sadurlamabidam. Vrideham adyam sulabam sadurlabam. It's a similar type of verse, but I forget which one Krishna said. In any case, labvam sadurlabam idam bahusam bhavante manusham artanam anityam apihadira. Even though human life is temporary, you only get it for a few minutes. The unique quality of it is that artadam, you can attain everything that's worth attaining from the human form of life, even though it's just for a short amount of time. So every moment is more valuable than working hard to earn billions of dollars, which will disintegrate in due course of time. Everything that we acquire in this life has a shelf life. Shelf life means the amount of time that something will remain consumable. It goes on the shelf. Box of crackers, for instance, it has a date on it. It says, "Don't eat them after this." They'll be rancid and maybe even poisonous. So everything in the material world has a shelf life, but one's contribution to devotional service, it goes on one's permanent record. That's an indication to give as much attention as possible to spiritual advancement while doing one's best. And in one section of the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada uses the word inventive when it comes to personal maintenance. He says as far as livelihood goes, one should be inventive. Don't be a scoundrel or be immoral, but be inventive and find a way somehow or other to maintain your life. And as is mentioned in the Bhagavatam, first canto, second chapter by Sutta Goswami, Kamasya Nindriya Pritir Labo Jiveti Yavata Jivasya Tattva Jignasya Narto Yasheha Karmabi. That to live a healthy life, eat quinoa if you need to, or drink pure water, whatever you have to do to maintain your vitality. But don't become out of balance and think that just maintaining one's body and being healthy and having vitality is the most important. Nowadays, there are many studies and options culminating in a movement that's called Live Forever. And they just had they means followers of this idea just had a convention. It was based on a book of how to eat all the right things and have all the right habits so you... Oh no, actually it's called don't die. Don't die. So the Bhagavatam says, do live a healthy life, but as a basis for which you can be vigorous in your cultivation of spiritual knowledge and make advancement on that level. In this context, we find that when one lives like that and has a view to using the human life for its ultimate goal, then one may see opportunities at various junctions. Louis Pasteur once said, great discoveries come only unto the prepared mind. And the way in which we can conduct ourselves is to be on the ready for opportunities that come to us for making spiritual advancement. For those who have this perspective and live life looking for the opportunities, when reversals come, they may be just what one was looking for, an excuse perhaps to walk away from what one knows is not wholesome or for one's ultimate good, but which one had difficulty in detaching from. Even Parikshit Maharaj, when he was cursed, mentioned in an aside that I probably wouldn't have done this on my own. I needed an intervention like this. And this classic case of Vidura that's mentioned here is that he was a pure devotee. He lived in a family that had some issues. Typical family. They had issues. And he was in the middle of it because he was brother of Dhritarashtra, and he was also, well, he had Duryodhana in the family, but he was a pure devotee and he was inclined exclusively to support the Pandavas. So that caused intrigue in the family. And we'll find by verse 15 in this chapter that there was an altercation in the household where Duryodhana insulted Vidura deeply due to the intensity of his hatred in his heart, his envy for the Pandavas, and he saw that Vidura was supporting the Pandavas. And when he did that, Vidura then, because he was on the ready for opportunities, he spontaneously, it was very spontaneous, he just walked out the door and laid his bow down and went on pilgrimage. So one way to live one's life, despite the fact that there may be attachments and complexities, is to Hari 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 is to have a prepared mind, or as one chapter in the Lilamrita suggests, a lifetime in preparation. If we inch out towards the ledge close enough so that if need be, Krishna can just push us over, or for that close. So a life of preparation can satisfy the idea that we may have that I should be more surrendered, but let me get more and more prepared so when the opportunity comes, I'll be able to take advantage of it. First of all, I'll recognize the opportunity, because sometimes we'll see the opportunity, but we won't have the strength of heart to take advantage of it. Hridaya Dharabhalya, Prabhupada says at the end of the 15th chapter of the Gita, or weakness of heart, is something that one needs to overcome altogether. I think coming to the Dham for Kartik is such an opportunity. It gets us out of perhaps our normal cycle of life, right? You have to cancel a few things, put a few things on hold, and you come here and we tolerate a lot in travel. I think just coming to a foreign country, you have to go through security quite a few times and have people poking at you and looking through your stuff like, got anything in here? And just justify your own existence like, yeah, that's really me, you know. And I was thinking how we're all walking towards a doorway of leaving this body, and that's kind of like a security checkpoint. When you get there, okay, what are you carrying with you when you're heading out? And taking the opportunity to come and hear Bhagavatam and voluntarily accept some inconvenience due to travel and living with the wrong kind of pillow. I don't like this pillow. Too bad, that's the way they are in India. Hard as a rock, or whatever it may be. Taking, as Rishabhadev said, Nayam deho deha bhajan liriloke kashtan kama marahate vidbhujamye. Tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam shudyat yasmad brahma saukyam tvanantam. With this idea that I'm preparing myself for unlimited happiness, and I'm inching my way away from the dependence on the ordinary course that the senses take in the material world and get addicted to. It's a wholesome activity. And we can see Vidura had this state of mind. And also worth mentioning, as it's mentioned here, Krishna's inclination. And it reminded me of the verse in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says himself, Samaham sarvabhuteshu nami dveshosti na priya nabhajanti tumam bhaktya maite teshu chapyaham. And according to our acharyas, in commentating on this verse, it has two parts. The first part is when Krishna describes how he's allowing us, he's the overseer and permitter, as is the translation to a verse in the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. He's overseeing and permitting us to act in various ways, and he remains neutral. But because Krishna is the ultimate responder, and he's supremely responsive, the whole makeup of the universe, which actually is Krishna also, as Prahlad Maharaj says, Yasmin yato yarhi yena cha yasya yasmayata yadutarastva para parova bhava karoti vikaroti prataksva bhava sanchoditas tadakilam bhavataksva rupam. He's noticing that everything in the world is Krishna. He says, Yasmin yato yarhi yena cha yasman. Whatever energies you're dealing with are actually Krishna. There's a way in which, therefore, we can notice how responsive the whole universe is, starting with, as the Avadhuta Brahmana says when he's mentioning his various gurus, the 24 gurus, he says that the body we're in can teach us a lot. One thing it can teach us is how of what equal response means, for instance, we can notice our bodies, and that the way we maintain them, we'll notice that there's a precise result. For instance, if you eat more calories than you burn off, then you'll notice that you gain weight. Do you ever notice that? I mean, if you're under 30, you may not have noticed it, but you will at a certain point. And if you don't sleep enough, you may notice that you get tired the next day. Have you noticed that? Are you noticing it right now? No? So the body is responsive, and all the energies of the universe are precise in their responses to the way we interact with them. And it traces back to Krishna's responsiveness to us. And there's a way in which he oversees and permits what we're doing and allows us to experience these responses until we come into a sense of, I'm getting what I put in. That's a necessary realization for being a responsible living entity. We should have a bumper sticker. Be a responsible living entity. And that's memorialized in the verse Tattenu Kampam Susumikshamano Bunjana Evatma Kritam Vibhakam. This is a mature living entity's perspective on the world. I understand that everything about the world is responsive to me and what I'm doing. Others who maintain a victim mentality and blame others can't make advancement. So Samaham Sarvabhuteshu, Krishna allows us to go about the ways that we've conceived for ourselves in the material world so we can experience the responses for ourselves, with the idea that we can become sensitized to the way that I'm acting in the world. And he doesn't interfere for that reason. He wants us to come to that conclusion and then become a mature living entity and embrace the idea of Tattenu Kampam Susumikshamana. In fact, if you want a litmus test of a mature living entity, you can bring up the subject of Tattenu Kampam Susumikshamana and see on a scale of 1 to 10 how accepting people are. This is one of the ways to understand how one's situated spiritually. And when one comes to an appreciation for the various ways that the universe is responsive and traces that back to a personal, that it is a personal response, that it's coming from Krishna, then one becomes Krishna conscious. And then one changes one's mode of thinking. Ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya. Bhajanti means one starts to sing out of appreciation for the opportunities that God is giving, that Krishna is giving. Bhajan is a kind of Abi Jash Gushik Trubhuvan. There's a way in which I want the three worlds to know. To know how great devotees are and how great Krishna is, and I'm so grateful, which is an emerging sentiment for those who have understood that God is behind everything, and everything he does for us is benevolent. This evokes the sense of ye bhajanti, that such a person, then they start to sing Hare Krishna. Ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya, mai te shuchapyam. And then Krishna says, at that time, I feel free to embrace the person the way they're embracing me. He's immediately responsive in love, but the acharyas say, at that point, the response that Krishna gives is inordinate. Samaham sarvabhuteshu means it's equal, tit for tat, just so you can get the feeling for how everything works in this universe and that there's a person behind it, Krishna. But then when you open your heart, then ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya, then Krishna says that I embrace the living entity. And he embraces me. Ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya, maite teshu chapyaham. I'm in him and he's in me. It's a very intimate relationship. And here we find, in a very practical way, how Krishna was inclined towards the Pandavas. That he wanted to, it says, he just walked in, he didn't knock. If you have that with any of your friends, they just come over. They didn't text you first. Just walk in. No knocking. It's like, I'm part of the family here. And he felt that way with the Pandavas, because maite teshu chapyaham, because they had such deep love for him. Whereas he didn't go to, in the compound of the Pandavas and Kauravas, where they all had their own homes, he didn't go to the home of Duryodhana. And in that way, there's a sense of bhakti bias. There has to be it's personal, and therefore there is a sense of bias, although we keep saying there isn't any. Krishna naturally responds to the love of his devotees. So we have that aspect in this beginning chapter, and we also have the aspect of taking the opportunity that's available, as Vidura did when he broke away from the family. He heard the harsh words, and he took that as the opportunity to walk out. And Prabhupada comments, as we'll read this morning, I'm sure, Krishna willing, that this was prompted by the internal potency. If we're practicing Krishna consciousness and we're praying for guidance, tesham satata yuktanam, then there's a way in which Krishna will give us a sign. And then it's the greatest victory we have in our life when we're able to take advantage of it when it comes. As we've been working on our strength of heart, yoga balena. Strength of heart means Krishna says it, I'm going to do it. This is the idea of surrender. Accept things favorable. So it comes up, it's favorable, it's available. Oh, I can't do it. I'm busy. This is due to weakness of heart. But if we can build up our strength of heart so that when the opportunity comes and we take it, then it's a huge victory. You think of Bali Maharaj as the Mahajan. It was an awkward situation for him because he was surrounded by all the people that he had helped steal heaven for, and they were all enjoying the idea that they had usurped Indra's capital city and ousted all the devas, and there were all his adoring fans. And then when Vamandev came, in his heart he thought, whoa, he's really beautiful. I'd like to bow down to him, but he couldn't do it right away. But then, when there was that mix-up, and Vamandev saying, just give me 3 paces of land, and Shukracharya saying, don't do it, he had the strength of heart to break the mold. It takes a lot for that. And to have the clear vision that that's the right thing to do and what to speak of to be able to do it at that time. It's one of the reasons he's the Mahajan. That proves how important it is to have clarity about what Krishna wants us to do, and then have the strength of heart to do it when the opportunity arises. And now we'll take some reflections or questions. Yes.
First point,
I'll bet we have a microphone because Chakadol and Puja are on the scene.
The verse Labdva Sadurlama Idam Bahusambhavante was spoken by the Avaduta Brahman.
Spoken by the Avaduta Brahman, Labdva Sadurlama Idam Bahusambhavante.
And Nrideham Adyam Sulabham Sadurlabham was spoken by Krishna himself. Similar verse.
Okay.
And I was appreciating what you said about how we're approaching the doorway of leaving this body, and that's a security checkpoint. What are you carrying? What do you got on you? What are your attachments? I just thought that was very poignant after having been through so many checkpoints. It's like, that's...
Look up the word poignant. Yeah, because he's used it twice in 2 days. He said it yesterday too. Poignant. It's a good word. It's poignant. And when I was coming through the Delhi checkpoint one day, I saw it said no spoons. I had a spoon and they didn't take it, but it really gave me some concern because I like my spoon. But it made me think everybody's got a list of things you can't take in. And there's some consternation there. Yeah. Poignant means?
Point, sharpness, power of irritation, as, quote, power of stimulating the organs of taste, in reference to emotional states, painfulness or bitterness.
Where does it come from?
I can tell you it comes from French.
Yeah, it sounds French, doesn't it?
Poignal is a kind of sword.
Puke.
What?
It says puke. P-A-U-K. To prick.
P-A-U-K is pauk.
Yeah.
Puke is P-U-K.
That's what it says.
Okay.
P-U-K.
It's from the Greek word for boxing, originally. To pierce or to prick. To
I
fight.
see. So it's a incident that is pointed. It brings us to a realization. Yes.
I was thinking how many times Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita emphasizes the need to be sama, equal. And many times I've noticed circumstances can be such where you're more absorbed in the circumstance than you are in what Krishna is trying to tell you through the circumstance. There's the show, so to speak, in like a theater, and one can become so absorbed in the actors playing their different roles, but not see that behind those actors there's a message which the director is trying to communicate via the actors. If one becomes too absorbed in the circumstances which are constantly changing, then one can miss the point. I was just thinking how this willingness to not see enemies and friends, favorable and unfavorable, and just see through and catch the essence of Krishna's message, it allows us to actually be in preparation. Because if we don't have that vision, then it could be right there, but you're so absorbed in the particular circumstance that you overlook it.
It's such an important point, and my recent realization of how to prepare to be sama is something very foundational. It's a foundational understanding of what is reality and what is illusion. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, nasato bhavate bhavo, nasate bhavate bhavo, bhavo vidite sata, ubayor aprijushtontas tvanios tattvadarshi. The tattvadarshis, those who are seeing the categories of energy of the world and understand their differences, have analyzed that there are some energies that are wispy and unsubstantial. They come and go. And then there's another energy, which is ourselves, our consciousness, which is always present. There are different states. Externally, as you described, there's our life situation, but there's sleeping, awakened, sleeping deeply, and there's also turiya, which means rising above those three states in which we're often distracted by our life situation, either in dreams or in awakened state. And in the second canto, second chapter, 35th verse, Prabhupada walks us through a meditation where he describes how even an ordinary person, he says, who's observant, can notice themselves as the seer of, for instance, he gives the example, see your hands, now see your feet, now see your head, now see your hair. And notice that because you're the seer, those limbs and appendages that he's just mentioned are different from you. And then he talks about noticing your own intelligence and how it comes to you as if offered by a parent, like a father who says, don't sit there, you're going to burn yourself if you do, it's hot there. This kind of intelligence, he says, we can't live without. We become deranged without it, but it's being offered to us. And then he also says, notice how every one of your senses is dependent on a higher power for them to work. Our vision right now is we're empowered to be able to look out and see one another. We may perhaps take it for granted. From that position, as Prabhupada mentions, you can notice that you're not any of your bodily parts, nor are you your mind or your intelligence, and you can be aloof. Hamsa Avatar, in the 11th canto, also mentions this state of seeing oneself or one's body and life situation as called shakshitva. Shakshi means witness or witnesshood. If you step back and are aloof from your life situation and you notice that it's going on and you're watching it, you can detach yourself from it. Then when there are urges, especially Vegas as mentioned by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, Shaknoti haiva yashodhum praksharira vimokshanat kama krodod bhavam vegam sayukta sasukinara. Krishna says, you can develop this Shakti, this power, to be able to be aloof from the urges when they come up, and you can notice them as a different energy state that comes through your mental system. And if we practice that, for instance, when anger comes up, it arises, Prabhupada says, from the mode of Rajaguna, and then if you identify with it, it can consume you, can burn you. It's called the Rudra energy of the universe. It burns everybody, except for those who are able to separate themselves from it and say, oh, there's Rajaguna, it's running through my system. And the very moment that you notice it as an energy and that you're witnessing it, you break the connection with it. So you don't have to be embraced by it because you step back from it, even by a tiny fraction. You have that objectivity from it. And I've found that if I prepare myself for the inevitable urges that come up, and I notice them in the form of anger. Have you ever felt that? Yeah. Anger might arise like, wow, that guy bumped into me. Like these Indian ladies in the Radha Damodar temple. It seems like they're purposely ramming me. And for a millisecond I thought, like, why are you ramming me? And then I just noticed it's a response built in, offered by the false ego to maintain one's sense of being the body, and I'm the king of the world, and everybody should bow to me and all that. Krishna says, Nirman, give that up. And then if there's a sense of jealousy, have you ever felt that before? You hear about somebody's great quality or somebody did something great and you think, oh, that guy? Darn it. And that's another energy. Krishna says, Icha dvesha samutena dvandva mohena bharata. It's part of the cosmic manifestation, and an influence of the lower modes of material nature. If we can practice Shaknoti Haivayashodhum Praksharir Vimokshana and breaking identification with those energies and notice that I'm aloof from them, Shakshitva, it develops a kind of strength to not intellectualize everything, but we actually have a different perspective of what's going on in our bodies and minds and in our interactions with the world. And it can lead to a state of sama. But it requires practice, is what I've noticed. Yes, Prabhu. Oh, time's up. Okay, let's see. You ask in 30 seconds, I'll answer in 30 seconds. It's a challenge. The 30-second challenge.
What's the difference of being detached and being callous or indifferent? Because sometimes one thinks, oh yeah, I'm spiritual. I'm really, I'm getting somewhere. But it's just being callous or indifferent. It might not be a good thing, depending on what it is too. Like, people become a little desensitized sometimes from each other and from the world.
5 seconds left. Okay. It has to do with whether or not one sees one's detachment from the situation in relationship to Krishna or not, and what's best to serve Krishna. What seems to be detached for some people may look like being attached to other people. Just yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, when we were zooming around Govardhana Hill in rickshaws, and Divyanam Prabhu was in an accident. Some truck hit he hit, something happened, I didn't see it, but he banged his head on the rickshaw and he got a cut because the windshield's shattered. And he turned out okay. He couldn't see for about 5 minutes because of pinched nerve. Went to the doctor, they fixed him up. I couldn't even tell, but somebody told me he was in a bad accident. But what happened was the rickshaw driver ran away because he thought he was going to be in big trouble. And Divyanam went after him, and he paid for his windshield. And the guy started crying. And there was a sense I got from that of being aware of what's the best thing to do in that circumstance. If callousness might be just walk away and let the guy feel like he's being pursued, or in this case, because he wanted to maintain a good relationship with all the people in the Dham, he went there. I mean, I don't know what exact motive was, but I thought it was really nice. He went and offered to pay for his windshield. So, thoughtfulness in relationship to how it relates to our service to Krishna is real detachment. Callousness based on being indifferent to how other people feel or how the circumstances will unfold for one's own purpose because of a sense of, well, there's nothing in it for me. That could be considered callous. But when somebody's thoughtful because they see that everyone's a part and parcel of Krishna, then whatever they do in that way, because they're doing it with a higher purpose in mind, whatever it may be, then that's real detachment, because real detachment means to act for Krishna and not for one's own sense of false ego in the world. And that brings us to the end of the first Bhagavatam class we've had together here in Kartik, inaugurating our reading of the third canto, which has how many chapters? 33. It's our 333 project. The 333 project. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram, Shri Giriraj Maharaj, If you so desire, please allow us to live here at your lotus feet during Kartik this year and enter deeply within the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. May we also be thoughtfully detached in your service. May we also be kind friends to all the devotees here and everywhere else. Thank you for considering our requests. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer in whole or in part. Please say Hare Krishna. Vanja kalpataruscha kripa sindhaveva cha patitanam pavanibhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. And unless I miss something and it's a fast day, I think prasadam is forthcoming. Hare Krishna.